So today I thought for meditation we might just practice slightly differently in a way that might be helpful for new insights to emerge, and also a practice that might be helpful to use, in daily life when you're going around doing your business. Because often you could be traveling on a train or in a car or waiting in a doctor's surgery or something like that, and you've got a lot of time and you're feeling a little bit stressed or tired or whatever, or even peaceful, and you're kind of a bit reluctant to sit on the train or in the doctor's office, meditating. You don't want to draw attention to yourself. You don't want to look pretentious. So this is where learning to meditate with your eyes open is very helpful. And no one needs to know what you're doing, but you're effectively meditating. And then as you're doing that, as part of things happening around you, people talking, trains moving, you can find a great deal of stillness within that movement, within that daily activity. So it's really good to learn to develop a practice where your eyes are open. So I'm going to, this morning we could look at two kind of perceptions to develop, or practices, and then I'd encourage you to give it a go when you're out doing things, waiting, traveling, whatever we do in our life. Maybe when you're sitting at your desk and you need to take a break at work. People think you're working hard. Yeah. Okay, so what I'm going to suggest you do is, for this, just at the beginning anyway, is just to keep your eyes gently open. The other thing that you could do, and I don't know where people are sitting, I'm going to put the focus, the camera on the bell. But if you're in a space where you've got open sky in front of you, you could always just use the open sky meditation. And you don't so much, stare at the sky or stare at the object that I'm going to put on the screen in a minute. You just gently gaze. And the reason for that is that you want to feel relaxed. You don't want to, your eyes to start feeling any eye strain. You're not making any great efforts here. You're just trying to find that beautiful balance between effortless meditation. Okay, so with a deep breath, just to prepare, come into the moment, I'm going to put the camera on the bell, and I'm just going to ask you to keep your eyes gently open for the beginning of this meditation. And to use the bell on the screen, if it's on the screen, okay? Yeah. As your focal gaze. And I'll give it a little ring. Oh, it's hitting the computer, hang on. All right. So just allow yourself to come into this present moment fully and gently. Your eyes are open in a soft gaze. Just focused in a unfocused way, really, on the bell. Your eyes are soft. And as your eyes feel the softness and the relaxation, this will actually have an effect on the whole of your body and of your mind. So the very fact of just keeping your eyes gently focused on one object creates a stillness that you need in meditation. Straight away, it's very effective just for feeling a sense of stillness and presence. And as you gaze softly on the bell, you can also scan your awareness at the same time throughout your body, checking for any tightness or tension, unconscious holding patterns. And just relax the body. As you tune into your physical body, the tension becoming more subtle, more soft. And tuning in to the breath. The natural breath. So all these things are happening all at once, but in a very easeful, relaxed way. We can gaze at an object, but we can also be fully present, fully in touch with our own physical and mental processes. So in this sense, your awareness is very expansive. It's not tight. It's not tense. You're allowing the perceptions of the body, sensations, and the breath to come into your awareness. Because this is what is grounding you, centering you. And similarly with any sounds, your awareness is expansive and open. Aware of the sound of my voice coming and going. The wind. Whatever noises are in your environment. And you just rest with your gaze on the bell. And the thoughts don't intrude. They're just there too, as part of all the movements, all the fluctuations. No need to identify or pick up any thought at this time. Just let it drift in, drift out. If you find you're thinking or analysing the bell, the shape, wondering about its history, just let any labels go, even the label bell. As the Buddha said, in the seeing, let there be only the seeing. As if you were looking at this, what we call a bell, for the first time as a child, before there was any name, any label. Any shape. So as we let go of labeling things, let go of names, and we're just gazing on this colour, on this light. You notice how when we empty out of names and labels, What effect does that have on your mind, on your inner experience? On the internal chatter? And as you're gazing on the bell, I encourage you now just to develop the perception, the awareness of the space around this object. You can perceive the space within the bell, the fact that there's all this emptiness within the bell. And the space around the bell. So simply to physically, at this stage, just to stare, to gaze at space. Obviously, it's not an object. I don't present it to you to look at. But you can perceive space around the bell, within the bell. And notice what happens internally when you develop this perception of space. Again, if you find yourself thinking about space, analyzing it, becoming all scientific or rational, just notice those tendencies within yourself and let them go for now. There's nothing we can really say about space. There's no words that are really adequate. But you can perceive it. You can recognize it. And now if you wish to, you can just gently close your eyes for the remainder of this meditation. If you wish to just continue gazing, then please do that. But whether your eyes are open or closed, you can start to perceive the space within you. And it's not so much that space is inside or outside. In reality, but we have these sort of perceptions. So we can just work with those perceptions for now. So as you turn the attention more towards the inner world, the inner body, we continue with this perception of space. Firstly, you can notice a space between each thought. Even though at times there appears to be no break in the internal dialogue, certainly when we start to meditate, we're developing more space. And if we start to notice those spaces between each thought, then the space will intensify and increase. And the duration of space will also start to increase. At least the perception of it. Because the space is always there. But we miss it by thinking, analysing, getting caught in our moods and emotions. And along with the space between each mental ping, each mental impression, see if you can notice or develop the perception of the huge space within your own body. This is a little easier if you have your eyes closed, particularly for beginners or when you're starting with this practice. when you let go of all the labels, all the old perceptions about your body and your body parts, you can start to sense how the space is all within you and without. It's like you're floating in this endless space, boundless, expansive, unfettered. Even at the same time, you may be aware of the body. It doesn't restrict you. And all the sensory contact and input, the sounds, the smells, and so on, they're all contained within this endless space, this infinite space. And when you recognize space and keep developing the perception of it, it's very easy just to rest into it. It's infinitely restful. Because everything's allowed, nothing is excluded or denied, but nothing sticks in space. And in reality, we are just one big planet one big globe of the earth floating in space. These perceptions we develop about being small, separate individuals with no connection to anything or anyone is simply just that, a faulty perception. But as we go deeper into stillness and silence, we actually start to realize the spaciousness that contains everything, everyone, every atom, every molecule. And this is the real natural state. Ever present, ever space. Okay. So, all you space cadets, I hope the perception of space and the eyes open is something you can utilize in your regular daily practice as you're going around doing your stuff. And if you have any questions arising from that meditation or anything in general, we take about half an hour or so to discuss that. So Eve has written a question. I'm looking for direction to becoming aware. I know that is what I am. However, I fall into the pile of illusion over and over and I get lost in the dream. Please point. So Eve, I think you wrote that maybe before or during the meditation. But that entire meditation was really pointing to becoming aware, because you're talking about the pile of illusion that you get lost in the dream, and that's what we do when we pick up our thoughts, our feelings, our moods, and believe them as me and mine, and all the conditioned patterns we have developed over this lifetime or lifetimes, then we believe that that's who and what we are. This separate individual with all their problems and their storyline. So really that meditation, and if you didn't hear it, or if you came in late and wrote that question, then I would simply encourage you as a start to listen, to do that meditation, because the whole point was to help us come out of the dream, to start to develop a subtle, sensitive awareness of the silence, the space within us, and to let go of all those mental perceptions and projections about this personality. Okay, so, and then of course, whatever of the teachings on the channel that you are drawn to, all of the masters will be just pointing you back to waking up out of this dream of this separate self. Okay. So just glancing at the other comments, it seems that was quite helpful for people, which is good, and brought some peace, some spaciousness. Okay, so Eve's saying, I typed that question right after I hit send. You've assisted me. Good. I'm glad that was helpful. I think things come to us just at the right time when we need them. And if we're sincerely, looking for an answer and asking for an answer, it'll come. It may not always come in the way we want it or expect it to, but if we're open and, I think a bit humble, then we'll get the answers we need to some of these questions. Okay, so there's a question here. Do I need to be in a certain meditation posture to receive the fullness of a meditation benefit? No, absolutely not. It's helpful to sit, try this out for yourself. You can sometimes lie down and listen to something, and then you can sit in a chair and listen to something, and then if you're capable of sitting cross-legged and listening to something. Not always, but sometimes I often find that when you're sitting in the traditional meditation posture, there's a reason it's a traditional meditation posture. It assists wakefulness. It keeps you've got that groundedness with your crossed legs. You've got the spine straight, and it's just a very supportive posture for allowing the energy to flow freely. So, when I listen to something sitting cross-legged, it's very different from lying down and relaxing. It's not that one's better than the other, but it has a different effect on the mind. So, for wakefulness, for, I guess cutting through certain delusions that we might be stuck with, an upright sitting position is often the best. But sometimes lying down, you can get into the most blissful, open, restful states where the teachings can really enter very powerfully. And, many people become enlightened lying down. Ananda, for one. He's a good, I don't know if many of you know the teachings, the early teachings of the Buddha, but Ananda was one of the Buddha's closest disciples, and he had this memory that he could remember everything the Buddha said. So a lot of what was recorded in the early Buddhist suttas was what Ananda remembered hearing the Buddha, because he went with the Buddha virtually for most of the Buddha's teaching life, heard the teachings, and in those days that's how teachings were transmitted. Nothing wasn't written down. So he had this photographic memory, astounding memory, and could recall what the Buddha said. So when you read the suttas, it's thus I have heard. At one time the Buddha was staying in Rajagaha or wherever, and this is what Ananda remembered. Anywho, so Ananda was this amazing bhikkhu, disciple of the Buddha, but he wasn't enlightened. He wasn't an arahant. I mean, he obviously reached earlier stages, and there was a lot of pressure on him to become an arahant. Long story, but to join the council and to start recollecting the teachings. So anyway, he was striving and striving and striving to become fully enlightened. This is how the story goes anyway, so just take it with a grain of salt. And he wasn't getting anywhere because there was so much struggle. You know, probably sitting upright for hours on end. I'm going to become fully enlightened, whatever. And you know, he didn't. There was obviously some wisdom lacking for him, and it was only when he realized that this is not going to work. He surrendered. He gave up, and he lay down and he let go. And in that very moment of letting go of this I struggle, I'm going to become an arahant. But he awakened fully as he was lying down. So you can see, you know, this can just be too tight, too much about me getting something out of meditation. And when we just relax, you know, but you can relax sitting too. So it's a relaxed sitting pose. But for Ananda, his experience was struggle, 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 strive, strive, strive. That pushed him to the brink. He you know, I don't even know if he was surrendered consciously. He just pushed himself so much. He had no choice but just to let go. And in that very letting go, lying down on his bed, he attained arahantship. That's how the story goes. So there's a lot to think about there. We have to look at how we're sitting. And it's not to, it's not to devalue the power of the formal meditation posture for very wakeful practice. But we have to see how we're doing it. If it's too tight, it's counterproductive. So Jim has asked after that, I seem to struggle with the balance of awareness and concentration. I seem to naturally bounce back and forth between trying to accomplish these things in meditation. Help. I'm going to suggest that what I just answered, Jim, may be helpful because, that's what I've just talked about. So with that space, open-eyed meditation that I did this morning, if you were here, was just to get that balance of relaxed awareness and concentration on the bell, or turning within to develop the perception on space. And it is a balancing act that we can only learn for ourselves. No one can really teach you it because only you know what's going on internally, whether you're too tight or too loose. And if you're too tight with concentration, it's very unpleasant. You might get concentrative states, but if there's no awareness and there's no balance, then people can become really obsessed with them, cling to them. And the reason we need that balance of concentration and awareness, or you could say concentration and the openness, is so that wisdom can arise. We want wisdom to come from concentration. We don't necessarily want bliss. It will come. Peace will come from concentration or bliss. But if that's all we're seeking, then we're missing out on the important part of the Dharma, which is we want wisdom to arise naturally. And wisdom will arise naturally if there's right concentration, because there's right concentration and there's wrong concentration on the path. But we have to come up against these things ourselves in order to learn, because if we don't, it's inevitable, really. That's what I'm saying, to come up against it. And then you learn, oh gosh, I'm tight. It's just an ego drive here, whatever. You have to see it for yourself. And then that's wisdom itself rising anyway, isn't it? But just one little metaphor that the Buddha used to use as a teaching, because this is an age-old issue for people on the path. He said, when we practice meditation, it's like tuning a lute. A lute is like an old-fashioned string instrument, like, say, a guitar. If it's too tight, the strings will snap. And even if they don't snap, they'll sound really tight, discordant. If they're too loose, they just, you know what a loose lute sounds like? It just kind of blah, blah. So we have to tune ourselves just right. And you could say that's what the middle way path is about. We have to sort of try and stay away from the extremes of laziness versus, overzealous, too gung-ho, right? But it's really something that we can only learn for ourselves, because we're the only ones that can really see it. Or, if you're fortunate to have a teacher near you who can see what's going on and help you point it out, that's helpful. But be your own teacher. Just be honest with where you're going off a bit into extremes. Right, so Mitchell has asked, are there stages to direct realizations or understandings? How do you perceive reality at your level? I don't know what background you're coming from, Mitchell. There are many teachings, but they'll talk about different stages in my tradition. If you're from the Vedanta, they'll talk about different stages too. They can be helpful as roadmaps, but ultimately it doesn't really matter. If you have a direct realization, it's helpful not to even think about what level this is, just because if you're thinking like that, it's actually not, it's not a really profound realization. If you have an insight, just let it be an insight and learn from it. But see, insights, understandings, it keeps going. You don't get to a point where, we have this notion of fully enlightened, but even that, an arahant, this concept of an arahant, it doesn't mean that they get there and that's the end of it. There's still understandings. It's kind of like the universe itself. It's infinite. And the Buddha talked about his level of realization. We're talking about a Buddha, a fully awakened Buddha. The story goes that he spent lifetimes as a bodhisattva developing this, so that his understandings, realizations, were just endless, So, and if you can compare, not that you'd want to, but we'll do it for the sake of this question, compared him to an arahant, it's like chalk and cheese in terms of his understandings, abilities, psychic abilities, whatever. But he didn't flaunt them. He said, and this is probably the most important thing to share about this, for this question, he used the metaphor of the handful of leaves. right? So that what was I trying to, he'd say, you know, you look at all the leaves in the forest, and, you know, being a forest, because they were often in the forest, millions and trillions of leaves in the forest. And he said, that's like my knowledge, my understanding. But what I'm giving you, you picked up, this is all you need. This handful of leaves is what I teach. And that's all you need for awakening. And his core teaching was the Four Noble Truths. Because if you want to spend lifetimes and lifetimes and eons becoming a Sammasambuddha, you can. But he's saying it's not necessary to do. He's done the work for us. This is what you need to become enlightened, to become liberated, to become free from suffering. And so he said, I know gazillions of things, but it's not necessary. And he didn't talk about them. He didn't go around showing off his, you know, his miraculous powers. But to become an arahant is an amazing, very difficult, phenomenal, I don't want to use the word achievement, but realization. And even arahants, different arahants in the stories of the Buddha, some of them had psychic powers, some of them had no psychic powers, some of them had great wisdom, some of them had not so much wisdom, some of them had phenomenal concentration. So you can see there's all these different levels. But it's a bit like our culture. We're always trying to compare and compete and weigh up. Don't worry about it. Just be who you are and be okay with that. And if you really want to understand the teachings of Dharma, the Buddha, it's about being free from this delusion of a self. And the greatest gift, really the greatest realization is that, because it's the greatest gift that you can offer to others. And to practice for the sake of others, the benefit of others, is what the Mahayana teaching is about, which is a very skillful way to focus the practice, rather than it being about my own realization, my own attainments, what I'm going to get. We practice for the sake of others. So this is a really skillful way to get away from this egocentric practice, because the ego gets into spiritual practice too. And if we do it for not in a kind of a pious way, you know, I'm going to be such a good saint to practice. We have to be careful of that too. But to practice in a way that's not always about me and my levels of reality and attainments and stuff like that. Anyway, I hope some of that was helpful, Mitchell. So Carlian says, is it possible that being aware feels kind of dull and flat? I don't know that it is, actually, because, I mean, awareness can sometimes feel ordinary, but again, we have to look at what we're adding on to it. Dullness and flatness, I kind of know what you're saying, but it sounds more like dullness and flatness would be an overlay. So what I'd encourage you to do is, if you are feeling dullness and flat, to just really look into that, to just, what does it feel like in your body? What's going on in your mind? Your mind might be really a bit dopey and drowsy. But see, that's not really aware. Awareness, when we're really in tune with it, even though in the midst of the dullness and flatness, awareness is still there. The fact that you're aware of it, right? But to sharpen it, to make it, I guess, more alive, more present, because you are alive and you are present. Just to be aware of the dullness and flatness, I guess what I'm trying to say is to fully embrace it, to be with it. And notice what happens when you do that. Because if there's a resistance to it, or if there's a judgment of it, or if there's a kind of resignation, this is pretty boring, this awareness is just dull and flat, then you're really overlaying awareness with something else. Because awareness intrinsically is not dull and flat. It's bright, luminous, and it brings aliveness to everything. Okay, so, but I guess without knowing more about what you're saying here, your experience, it sounds like, there's a kind of a general awareness, because we're always aware, but the dullness and flatness is occluding it. So go into that dullness and flatness, drowsiness, whatever it is. And it's the same with anything that might be, I guess, overlaying the awareness, whether it's anxiety, restlessness, boredom. Go into those, because they're not the natural state of awareness. Okay. Oh, where are we? Eric, what would be the correct response of our ego wants to play a character to have fun, like being an actor on a stage in life in its view? This seems like a dangerous and slippery slope. Well, I think we're always playing characters in our life, aren't we? I mean, you think of who you are with your family as opposed to who you are at work, to who you are with your loved one, to who you are with children, to who you are with your dog or your cat. We're always playing different roles. So just to be aware, I mean, actors make money out of it and they're quite good at it. I'm not sure what you mean by a dangerous and slippery slope. I think if actors play really dark characters, it can be problematic. And, I guess there's a skill in needing to come out of that. So, but just to be aware that our whole personality is a character construction. That's all. And it's been conditioned to be the way it is through all of our life experiences. But awareness, coming back to awareness, the natural state, that's not a personality. It's not a state of mind of dullness or flatness or anxiety. That doesn't have any of these characteristics. Okay. So you'll welcome people who are writing expressions of gratitude. I'm glad it's helpful, huh? We never intended to do this thing on YouTube. It just happened. So when things just happen, I don't know about you, I tend to trust them a lot more. When it's not me thinking I'm going to do this. So anyway, it's happening. These sessions are happening, and it's all happening, dudes. So Bloom is asking, is it possible to step out from mind patterns and vasanas? They come over and over again. Yep. The more I fight against them, the more power they get, the more suffering happens. How to become free from me. Well, yeah, this is the whole practice. But I think you can probably hear, Bloom, in that question, you're fighting against them. No fighting, just recognition. So, of course, what we resist, what we fight against, becomes stronger. So, this is again coming back to that balance of right effort. If we just give in to them, then we just become a big blob and we do what we like. If we struggle and become tight and fight them, we either repress them and then they become stronger. So what to do? It's really just about waking up, developing awareness. So when you see whatever mind pattern it is, anger, jealousy, desire, greed, you name it, they're all there. To apply wisdom to it. So the first thing would be, don't believe that that's who and what you are. It doesn't belong to us. It's not a person, right? We create the person. It's just a mind state, a pattern, a vasana, a sankhara, whatever tradition you're in, that's come through conditions or conditioning, if you like. So how to break these patterns, these conditionings? Firstly, we just have to be aware of them. So the fact is, you're aware of them. That's the first step. But then the wisdom has to come by working with them skillfully. We have to feel them. We have to be willing to embrace them, not indulge them, not deny them. But also the more effective way of moving out of these mind patterns, if you like, is to feel them in the body. So when you notice anger, jealousy, hatred, lust, what does it feel like? To fully embrace it means to fully be with it in the body, to notice how it overtakes the body with tension, tightness. We contract. We have a physical response to it. We feel sick. We feel whatever, So to go into the body, if you can, in meditation, that's why we sit in meditation. It's a bit easier. But if it's in the midst of having a conversation with someone and you notice this rage coming up, the practice that you've done on the cushion of just breathing through that means that it's going to be easier in the moment when you want to smash someone in the face, not to do that, just to breathe into it, to notice the contraction, the desire to want to act out, to say something abusive, to do something physically abusive, and to breathe with it, to notice it in the body, and to bring wisdom and awareness to it. Okay, the first thing is it's suffering, it's dukkha, and to understand how this mind pattern is in itself dukkha, and to investigate it. I believe it is me. I think it's who and what I am. I start the storyline again about me or about him or about her, and on it goes. And that's why these patterns continue. So it's about breaking it then and there. But just in that moment of seeing it, and even if we get caught up in it for a while, that's okay. We're lessening. We're lessening each time. We might be angry for an hour, and then next time 45 minutes, 30. We're breaking it, those patterns. So we've got to be patient. That's the other thing. It's not going to change overnight. If we have a lot of deeply embedded patterns, emotional, psychological patterns. We have to be patient. We want to be Superman overnight. We want to be Super Buddha. It's not going to happen. And there's a lot of fools who believe that it can happen, and they're just running around being fools, believing in foolishness. So we have to be patient, be honest, and just keep looking, keep working, and keep letting go of the belief that this is who and what I am. Okay? And just keep listening to the Dharma. Because I can give you one answer now. You get a little bit goes in. It's going to take time. It's drip, drip, feed, and just keep listening to the Dharma, to the masters. They're all pointing us in different ways to the same thing, in the same direction of freedom. So pick up what works for you, what resonates best for you, and keep practicing. So Christine said, thank you. I had an aha moment of the spaciousness and a sense of being at home and being the space itself. Great. Yeah. Yeah, we're always in the space. We are space. And that sense of space, to bring that bloom to the stuff that you feel that you're trapped in. Because even though you might feel you're trapped in this stuff, notice that there's a space between that. It's not a continuous unbroken flow of negativity or whatever. It can feel like that sometimes, but there are breaks in it. So to start to notice the breaks and to start to realize, or even identify, if you like, at this stage anyway, as a space itself. And then that space will grow more in between the difficult patterns. So Rika says, as we went into the mind, I think that was in the meditation, it seemed as though the Chaitasikas and the Sankharas, so they're the mental conditioned processes, slowed to allow the mind moments. It seemed to gap for awareness between awareness. Yeah, great. Yeah, so we just keep creating the space. And that's why when you do retreats, for those of you who do retreats or take a day out, you engage in noble silence. So to stop talking for a day or for 10 days or whatever, that itself starts to create more and more space, more and more gaps, if you like. Because we do so much talking, don't we? And silence is so uncomfortable for so many in our world. Okay. Oh, this thing jumped. I'm going to have to just bear with because I'm getting a lot of... The sun's coming up, out. Yeah. I can read the screen a bit better now. There we go. That's better. Sorry, I have to just go back and find where I was up to. Okay, so Jim. Sophia, may I ask, sister, where you went and did you live with teachers? I didn't go far. I just went on into a cabin up the road at a Tibetan retreat center, because we teach there sometimes, and the Khenpo La has kindly offered us a little cabin up on the mountain near a sacred mountain. So that's where I went, and then I continued back here. So I'm in a little what you'd call a tiny home. This is a little tiny home. It's tiny, and it's my little retreat hut, if you like. So I can practice here. But we were given an opportunity to go into a nice little cabin in a very isolated area. Okay. Where am I up to? Who would tell you that you're an arahant? No one would tell you you'd know if you're an arahant. Don't worry about it. When you get to that stage, if you genuinely get to that stage, there's no need to talk about it. Those who go around telling everyone they're an arahant, don't believe them. The reality is the arahant realizes there's no one to be an arahant. So if you say, I'm an arahant, you're just, no. Anyway, be with it and realize it's only a judgment coming from a need to. I think that's in response to someone else. Okay, I'm finding a question. Do you find it hard to keep in touch with family and old friends? The conditioning and unwillingness to open up to true self gets on my nerves, as you just want them to feel the same thing you discover. Oh, family and friends, yeah. Yeah, my family's not on the same path as me by a long shot. But that doesn't matter, I still love them. They're doing their thing. Often just go back into my old self to relate to be able to relate to them, to make them feel comfortable. And, they're going at their own pace. It's not a problem. Old friends, they're doing their own thing too. And I think the thing is, we don't have to. It can feel. I know what you mean, Mark Twain. I know what you mean. When you start on a spiritual path and you've got old friends and families who are just doing the drinking, the drugs, the partying, the shopping, the renovating, you feel really alienated and you'd like them to just become spiritual too. So it's a time when we might change friends. We can't change family. We have to just, unless they've been highly abusive towards you, there's no need to ditch your family. They're family, and we've got this karmic connection with them, and we can tell them what we're into. A lot of my family never ask; they're not that interested. And I don't tell. I don't say much. Talk about the footy with my brothers if I know what's going on. So. But, if your friends are into really toxic stuff, it's probably just a good idea to gently walk away and find new friends that can support you. But this idea, we don't want to proselytize this stuff. We don't want to try and shove it down people's throats, because it'll go the wrong way, basically. And we just become preachers. So just live the best life, and that's going to help them. They see that you're happy, less judgmental, more peaceful, more generous. So, wow, and they might inquire, they may not. But old friends might just be doing their own same old, and we wish them well, and it'll naturally change. Yeah. You can feel a bit lonely at times when you start on this path, but you just look for ways to connect with people. That's what Sangha's about. You want Sangha to support you in the Dharma, and sometimes that Sangha can be quite invisible. You feel support coming from other sorts of spaces, places. Okay, I'm just looking for a question. I'm glad the open eyes was good for you, Maria. It's a good one to try and integrate, isn't it? Question. Namaste. How to practice Kanti. Kanti, one of my favorite words, Bhavani, Kanti means patience. How to practice patience. Our whole life is a practice in patience. Just being in samsara is a practice in patience. I think, as a conscious practice, one of the best things for me, there are many ways to deepen, strengthen Kanti. Those of you who've got children, they are your best teachers in Kanti, or difficult partners or family. They are your best teachers in Kanti, to be patient, but not in a patronizing way. But in and of itself, in terms of the Buddha's teaching, one of the best, I found, reflections for deepening Kanti is to reflect on the three characteristics of existence that the Buddha taught, which is impermanence, anicca, not self, anatta, and unsatisfactoriness, dukkha. So when you start to really understand this in your heart, not just at the intellectual level, that everything in the phenomenal world is characterized by those three qualities, then we let go. We stop expecting that life is going to be perfect or is going to be permanent and not change, or is going to bring us lasting happiness. And then everything's okay. Everything is just as it is in this samsaric realm, characterized by the three characteristics that I just spoke about. And then that just, for me, gives rise to a great sense of patience, because you let go of trying to fix things, that can't be fixed, or expect things to be perfect when you know that that's not what phenomena is about. Phenomena is always changing, always going either what we call good or bad, but even that good and bad is just our perceptions that we layer on top of it. So just keep reflecting, Kanti Bhavani, on these characteristics, and then patience just naturally arises, because this is the nature of this samsaric realm. It can't be any other way. If you want it to be another way, that's when we lose patience, and we struggle, we get frustrated. Saying that, because this is where people hear things wrongly, it doesn't mean you give up, you become despondent, and you go, life is just rubbish. Yeah, it's always going to be rubbish. It's not about that. Life isn't rubbish. Life phenomena is just the way it is. It's our attitude towards it that creates the problem. So when we really understand the nature of reality, of the conditioned world and the unconditioned, then we don't struggle anymore. And patience is always with us. Even when we feel impatient, we're patient with our impatience. Oh, yeah. I grew up being in a culture that's very impatient. Everything has to be done now. Results have to be done now. Enlightenment has to happen now. So I see my own impatience when I see what I perceive as incompetence. And you have to just see through those conditioned judgments. And great teacher, when you come up against what you perceive as incompetence or whatever, always learning patience. And thank you for the question, because the Buddha said Kanti Parami is the highest virtue. So he said patience is the highest virtue. So if you can develop patience with everything in life and with your practice, that will take you further than anything else. Something to contemplate, isn't it? Okay. So is the space meditation we practice currently the same as the Buddhist jhana practice of attaining a sphere of infinity of space in the 4 jhanas? The perception of space in the arupa jhanas is, that's a very deep perception of it. But, it's, you could talk about different intensities of it. So it might throw someone into a very deep jhanic space naturally in developing that perception, but it doesn't have to. You just develop it at whatever level you're working with, because space is always there. But just a story about that perception of space, when I was young, I don't know, 8, 10, I think it was about 8 or 10, I had these moments where I'd be lying in bed, and of course the mind as a young person is pretty spacious, pretty empty, and it would happen fairly irregularly, that as I was drifting off to sleep, and some of you might have had this as a child or had this as an adult, is that the mind would just be empty, and if you feel yourself falling to sleep, and then it's very hard to explain, but then the whole body would dissolve into space, and the mind would dissolve into space. The whole room would become space. And this happened to me many times as a child. It used to freak me out a bit because it was very weird. And there was just awareness. There was just kind of this bright awareness, and then everything was just space. So it might have been, what they call one of the Rupa jhanas, perceptions of space. I didn't have any words, any understanding what was happening. But whilst it was a little bit freaky, it was extremely pleasant because it was just infinite space and a freedom. But because as a child I didn't have a lot of, I didn't have any words, did I? I didn't have any models. But I also didn't have a lot of mental anguish. So it just felt like kind of normal, but not normal. And I never told anyone about it because I couldn't even put a word to it, as a child. It's just like, what would I say? I'm my whole body, guys. I don't know what's going on. So, yeah, those things can happen spontaneously. And but don't go around looking for it. You read it in the text and you go, I'll go and see if I can recreate that. You're just getting in the way. These things, these jhanas, these deep absorptions, concentrations, they come spontaneously when you let go. And that's what I was doing as a child, not trying to let go. I just was letting go. And then things happen. It's the same in meditation. Just let go. Don't go looking for states, looking for bliss, looking for anything. Just let go. Work with what is. And then the Dharma does its thing. A deep breath when I feel impatient. Indeedy. Yeah, a deep breath. Where are we up to? I think we finished the questions. So Ezra says, I've had very scary glimpses that I had to come back into the body from wherever I was. What does it mean and what should I do next? I'm not sure if he just wrote that after I just told you about my child jhanas or whatever they were, child things. But they can seem scary, these things, because we're so conditioned to believe and feel and perceive that we are this solid body with a sense of a self that's kind of got some sort of structure or permanence to it. So when we meditate, when we go into these states of deep relaxation, those structures will dissolve, and we want them to. We want to come out of this fixed, constrained, contracted perceptions. But it can feel a bit scary. So what does it mean? All it means when these things happen is that these structures are melting and breaking down. And that's what practicing meditation and Dharma means. Because it's not real, right? We're living in a faulty perception. It's quite functional to perform in the world, but if we believe it all the time, believe it's real, we suffer. So when these things start to break down, just notice, if there's fear comes up. So that's one thing to work with. Can you just notice there's fear because we want to hold on to the known. We're scared of the unknown. But what I did as a child, even though I said it was scary, I didn't resist it, I went with it because it was quite lovely at one level, because it just took you into this big empty space. And it wasn't like a blank, horrible void of nothingness. It was just a big open, it was almost like a big warm embrace, particularly when I rested into it. So all you need to do, Ezra, if these things happen for anyone, just notice, the fear. There's fear there because things are dissolving. And fear is a natural response to things that we can't control or aren't familiar with. And just say, can I just be with this fear? Can I just stay with the breath? If the breath's there. Sometimes the breath disappears, and that's scary too for people. Just notice, there's fear, and come back just to being with your awareness. Because when you come back to just noticing awareness, it doesn't have an opinion, doesn't have a view, doesn't have any fear. It's just noticing. So if you can just shift that attitude towards finding things scary to, this is interesting, can I just surrender to it? Have patience with it and see what happens. Because the control freak within us is pretty big, pretty entrenched. And we just have to notice that control freak, and also just understand that these practices do sometimes, not always and not for everyone, it just can take us into quite deep states, that are unusual. It might just happen once, might happen a couple of times. And it's also, if they happen or they don't happen, it doesn't matter. It's not a measure of success or anything. Just whatever happens, happens. How do you continue to recognize and let go of the desire to get lost in the world and its joys or pleasures as an ego? You just notice it. You just keep recognizing that desire. And to feel, what does desire feel like? You're saying the desire to get lost in the world and its joys or pleasures as an ego. Just next time you have an intense desire, any desire, just notice, what does desire feel like really when you want something? I don't know what you want. Pleasure, some sort of pleasure. It's actually quite painful, because desire is about wanting, chasing, clinging, tensing, contracting. And the funny thing is, when we get the desire, often it's not the desire that gives us pleasure. It's the ending of the desire. It's, thank God, we don't have to desire anymore. We've got it. So investigate that. It's like, because desiring things is inherently painful. It's not pleasant, because it is about a me wanting to get something, and when you are desireless, when you let things be as they come, without always chasing things, it's very peaceful. And it doesn't mean, again, you say these things, masters say these things too, and people misinterpret them. It doesn't mean you become a vegetable and you don't have any desires. Or I'm not going to do anything because the teachers tell me I should be desireless. It's not about that. You still have, I guess you could say, you have intentions, aspirations, but they become a bit more wholesome. They become a little less about me and my base desires, sensual desires, to desires to want to do things for awakening, to help others, to improve the world, But even those desires you have to be careful of, because people can become very, can't they? What's the word? Anyway, become quite extremist about things. And so we have to balance wanting to do things with letting go, because it may not work out the way we want to. But we still do things, but it's not with those same kind of base desires. Okay. Anywho, I think it's getting on now, so I'm going to just apologize in advance for not probably getting to all the questions. And maybe I'll take just one more if I can find one. Someone who hasn't asked a question. David's experience on the bus. Maybe we'll end with that just as a sharing. He was doing metta. He was practicing metta, loving kindness on a city bus yesterday, and a man stood up and started dancing and singing. I just can't be gloomy. I just can't be gloomy, y'all. I just can't be gloomy. That's cute. I wonder if it was your metta. You think it might have been you generating all this nice energy on the bus, and he picked it up and he started dancing and singing. Isn't that lovely? So thanks for sharing that, David. Maybe you can do a little song and dance routine about it now. Sweet. All right, everyone. Well, I hope today's session was helpful, and it stays up in the archives if you missed the beginning or the end. And so in a fortnight, I, Jatindra, will be offering a session, same time. I think it's still daylight savings. Gosh, let me just check before I let you go. It's the 20th today. I think it's still daylight savings on the 3rd. I think it's the second week. Yeah. Anyway, that will confuse everyone as soon as we switch to so-called normal time, but we'll try and post a few reminders, because everything changes, doesn't it? I think Europe goes back. We go forward, you go back. I don't know what happens in the States. It all just becomes confusing. But that's the nature of samsara, isn't it? Nothing's perfect. Okay. All love and blessings to everyone, and keep practicing patience, because it's a very scarce commodity in our world. And may all beings find the patience within their hearts. Okay. Sayonara, everybody.